the heart and soul of the movement came most alive at its festivals.
The festivals have really been the basis of it all. The festivals are how we found each other.
It's a long way from the Delta to the North Georgia hills, and a sack full of ginseng home from old Chapel. I'm too old to ride the rail, but I'll make it all my own, and I guess I'll never make it back to home. My muddy water, Mississippi, Oklahoma.
The festivals are a place where women, mostly lesbians, but not all, come together to hear the music, but they also come together to be with each other and not only check each other out, but to check their own realities and to expand.
We tend to think of the locus of lesbian feminist activism as either East Coast or West Coast, but really it's the Midwest that contributed the longest running, biggest festivals. And so the really first big festival is national.
I am asking everything you have to give.
It all started in Champaign-Urbana when Kristen Limbs, indignant about the lack of women performers at the local folk festival, fought back.
I went in there to them and said, how could you have a folk festival that is all male? This is inconceivable to us. And they said there just weren't any women good enough. And I am so glad that was said to me, because that got my dander ruffed. My sister and I were so outraged. We said, what do you mean no women good enough? We put an ad in the paper and said, no women good enough? Come and audition at our Women's Folk Festival. We programmed it for the same night as the all-male folk festival. And we had an overflow crowd. From what I hear, theirs was very woebegone.
Inspired by the success of her Women Folks Festival, Kristen Limbs founded the first National Women's Music Festival in 1974.
With a song, this will celebrate 20 years of the festival and of Misty Mountain. With the Misty Mountain, wildflowers find the ground down by the Russian River.
The greatest tribute to Kristen is that this festival is celebrating 20 years. And we owe it to someone who said, I'm mad as hell and I ain't gonna take it no more. Screw those boys. We're gonna do it our way. We got too much talent to keep down.
Excited by the idea of a 3-day outdoor festival, Lisa and Christy Vogel, along with Mary Kendig, set out to produce the Michigan Women's Music Festival, which first took place in 1976.
And I kept getting a lot of people saying, you're nuts, you know, like we're in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. What we've done is thrown 1 or 2 good keggers.
Don't you think it's time you had a change of life?
We literally have a party at our house, stop the music right at the most exciting moment and pass the hat. We had no money. And so we went off to Champaign and everybody's thinking, who are these women who are doing this big festival in Michigan? And we went there with a hand-drawn Ditto Master that we'd snuck into the university and done with a little, you know, like the little purple ink. And all the other producers who at that point were taking themselves very seriously were going, wait a minute, you're doing this big thing that we're all talking about. What's up with these Ditto Masters, you know? First festival was 3 days long, and there ended up being 2,000 women who came. Many more than we had imagined might come.
The first time I went to Michigan, It was my first exposure to being surrounded by such great all-women performers. You know, I had never seen that before. And being a little Latina from, you know, from San Francisco, and I was like with my red lipstick and my high heel shoes in the middle of the woods, and I just went, wow, this is amazing, all these women.
I'm so proud of the things we invented. I don't know if anyone was doing them in 1973, 1974. We made up the sliding scale. We didn't want any woman to be turned away because she didn't have the means.
We didn't want to exclude any woman. So those women who had been marginalized, deaf, differently abled, in wheelchairs, suddenly it became an issue. What do we need to do to change our practice so that all women can experience our culture?
I'm just looking for some real love.
I've never been in an environment where a production company changed policy to take care of the audience.
Oh, real love, real love, real love. Can't you see me?
I think that was a true gift because those concerts were being interpreted for deaf women. I mean, for heaven's sakes, at Michigan, you know, you had accessible camping.
We have other campers up the blacktop here. This used to be a boardwalk. It was made out of wood, and in the last 5 years they put this in, and it's made it more accessible.
I couldn't be doing it without DART. I couldn't possibly come to the festival. I couldn't haul my gear. I couldn't be in a location far away from downtown. This year I am less able than I was last year. I'm MS, chronic progressive, and so each year I find myself camping a little closer to the action, and so this year I'm smack on top of the action.
Open up your heart and let us in.
Susan Freundlich's simple wish to share women's music with a deaf friend proved revolutionary.
She was teasing me about how hearing people seem addicted to music. And she was saying, why do you always want to have this music on? What is the big deal?
Go back into the darkness like the wild thing that you are.
I had just gotten the Changer and the Changed. And I was so thrilled. I thought it was the best thing I'd ever heard in my life. And I said to, I tried explaining something about it and it just didn't make any sense to her. And so I said, well, let me just show you what one of these songs says, and tried to sign it as best I could. And she got very still. She said, I never knew that hearing people had the same feelings that deaf people do. That was when I started talking to producers to say, hey, I promise you won't have to do anything extra. I'll do it all. Let me put this together.
Susan started with Holly Near and ultimately helped to usher in a whole community of signers who made access part of public life.
Every time you see a public official speaking locally or nationally, they've got an ASL interpreter by their side. That is something that did not exist before the women's music industry.
It's a doggone shame some people don't look inside. Instead they spend their time just watching you die.
It's always nice to have the deaf person be on stage doing the interpreting, because sign language interpreters usually don't sign as naturally as deaf people do, so the deaf people have much more joy to see a deaf person on stage signing. I always knew that I'd like to have a chance to, do the interpreting myself, and I couldn't figure out how in the world that would come about until Sherry sort of told me that I could. She said, come on, let's do a gig together. And I could see the audience's response to me when I was on stage, that they were getting something out of it. They're flashing all the lights and very thrilled with the work.
The evolution of sign language interpreting was not without controversy, including concern about cultural sensitivity.
We started to go through the material and we sang something with Africa, and she did this. And I said, "What did you just sign?" She said, "Africa." I said, "Is there another sign for Africa?" She said, "I can spell it out." I said, "Okay." And so then I realized that racism could be expressed in any language, and we were bringing it onto the stage. Then I met Isai Maria Barnwell. She was singing and signing at the same time, and it was colored. I walked up to her and I said, "When you sign, you look black. Why?" She said, "Well, sign language is just like any other language. It is culturally defined."
As women's music made strides toward providing access for all women, it was also expanding to include different musical and entertainment genres.
People like Kay Gardner demanded that classical music be a part of it. Mary Watkins, as a keyboard player, says jazz and blues are part of what we do. And women just kept showing up and saying, "Me too, me too, me too," and the picture just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
It's like candy, sugar in your ear. The way you talk to me makes me feel queer.
Women's music became women making music. It didn't matter what style it was at all. I mean, here I am, a classical musician, folk, jazz, everything.
And it's never, no, it's never failed me yet. That's what we call it.
Part of the evolution and the empowerment that took place had to do with the claiming of this space for music without lyrics.
I did sing more in the beginning because I didn't quite trust that people were open, but they are. You know, when it's real and when you dare to really speak your truth as best you can, people, they get it. And that has, and that's opened me up in the world, period. I mean, this whole thing has opened me up.
She's so tired and lonely. Where is the spirit healer?
When I started going to a few women's concerts, I thought, "Oh, where's the jazz? Where is the improvising?" I came home from the Michigan Festival and I went to a workshop for women in jazz. And there were the women of Alive right in the room. Carolyn Brandy and Suzanne Vincenza. It began as a trio, and we fell in love with each other that night.
Because it's too dangerous to run in the park, run in the dark, run in the park, run in the dark. Get showered and dressed, get the cats fed, get the kids off to school, sit down and make myself a cup of fresh, strong, healthy decaf.
The Women's Phil was the brainchild of Elizabeth Min, who was our first music director. She was studying conducting. I had a professor who was a woman who was a very outspoken feminist. I asked her at one point, "Hey, where are the women composers?" And she said, well, you know, there really aren't any, but music is universal. And that stuck in my head. She found works by women composers. And I think that was really one of the main impetus of the orchestra.
The mid-70s brought a profusion of women's choirs. Among the first were Sue Fink's L.A. Community Women and Kathy Roma's Anacrusis Choir in the Midwest.
They created mission statements or philosophies, and many of these included in the goal to commission works by women composers. And these collaborations were incredible because what it gave choirs and conductors the opportunity to do was to choose texts that really spoke to the lives and the experiences of women. Music that came forward through the mouth of a Ronnie Gilbert or a Holly Near is now going to be sung by young people and college-age people across the country.
The women's music cultural movement grew to include dance, comedy, and other forms of theater. Chrissy Kiefer founded the Wallflower Order, which toured on the same circuit with women's music.
I think that our national impact was so enormous that the festivals kind of had to figure out a way to start opening up to different art forms.
Well, it's not just women's music, it's women's culture, dance, and comedy for sure, because I think now comedy is where our politicizing is coming from. You know, they can just punch you right between the eyes.
I mean, even in the area of safe sex, right? A man pulls out a condom, it's obvious what body part it's for. We're stuck with something for your teeth. What the heck is a dental dam?
Every civil rights movement does boil down to bathrooms at some point. It's true. There weren't any women in the Senate because there weren't any bathrooms for them. They build the bathrooms and they will come. That's the thing.
One of the most explosive issues in women's music from the very start was women-only spaces.
Holly Near and Malvina Reynolds were both coming to the festival for the first time, and they were appearing the same night. Holly wanted no men. Malvina insisted upon the right of men to attend. It was so traumatic. I'll never forget the scene on Thursday late afternoon on the steps of the auditorium. Malvina distributing her leaflet, and Holly about 100 yards down distributing her leaflet, saying the best thing you can do if you support our music, you men, is not to attend. The university busted us and said, either you let men in or you close down. So we didn't have to resolve it. Well, in a sense, I mean, it was resolved for us, not by us.
People would always ask me, why women only? And my response over the next 20 years of starting Olivia, my response was always the same. It was, if you could name 5 women bass players, 5 women guitar players, 5 women drummers, 5 women producers, 5 women engineers, we will stop. And you know, never did get anyone to do that for me.
We are on our sacred land.
To have that space, to create that space so that women could be safe for maybe the first time in their entire life, that was a precious, precious experience.
We drag people here because of the safety. We you know, people who've experienced a hard time or been attacked, we say, come here, and it's a healing place.
I was able to bring my mother to Michigan 3 times, which was just a totally wonderful experience for both of us. I didn't tell her the women mostly didn't wear clothes until after she bought her non-refundable ticket. And I didn't tell her that the showers were outside until she was on the land in the van coming from the airport. And But we had been on the land like maybe 2 days, and we were walking down the path, and she turned to me and she looked at me and she said, I now know what freedom is. She said, I never knew this before.
Women passing through the world, sharing tears and struggle with the strength of miles behind.
You know, it's very, very complicated to make a safe space for everybody. And we tried, and we succeeded to some extent, and we failed to some other extent.
Family of woman, we've begun.
I found myself in a situation where everywhere I was going, the fact that I was coming and asking for women only and then at some point lesbian only concerts was divisive in every community I was going to.
Armies made of lovers cannot fail.
We created a closed and separatist environment. And in that closed and separatist environment, we learned and we became strong. And then we broke that like an egg and went out into the world and did what it was that we wanted to do.